us Nii Simmonds and also Alexander Zanders, who's going to talk to us about his work with AI and agriculture and how we are anywhere and how we are advancing through technology. And so I'm going to give a warm welcome to both of our speakers. If we could clap for them as we welcome them on board. And so I will give a brief introduction of both of our wonderful speakers, starting with Alexander Zanders. Alexander is the founder and CEO of UFArmX, a company that is using AI technology for the farming industry all across the continent. And then we also have Nii Simmonds, digital economy strategist and innovation expert. And we're going to talk about Africa's digital infrastructure. And I'm not a tech person, but I know Nii is. And so Nii is going to share with us a little bit about what is recently going on. As everybody knows, especially on the fintech side, Africa has been a global leader from mobile money revolution to new platforms that are reshaping trade and access to finance. And at the same time, artificial intelligence is opening new frontiers in agriculture, health, commerce, and beyond. So to help us unpack some of these opportunities, risks, and the future, we are here with both of our speakers. So Nii, you do a lot of work on the digital economy and Africa's gateway to digital transformation. What does the FinTech 2.0 revolution look like, especially when it comes to tech, AI, and how is it layered into different aspects of working in Africa? Oh.
Okay, there we go. There we go. First of all, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me, and great job in organizing this event. Never easy to organize an event of this caliber. Kudos to you and your team. In terms of, yes, I'm not a fintech expert, although I have a development finance background. I used to work at a World Bank Group, IFC, FDB. I'm not even an innovation expert. I'm a generalist. On the fintech side, I mean, I would speak from more of a macro view on the fintech. Your question was specifically on fintech. What was it more on?
Basically, how has technology, artificial intelligence opening new frontiers and sectors?
Yes. So, well, I would say generally, I mean, I want to take a step back. So there's, this fintech revolution, this space that we're in. A lot of people forgot maybe about 15 years ago. We actually had fintech about 50 years ago. It's PayPal, right? Now you're in a space where you have things like crypto, you have AI, and everybody has a mobile phone, and now you can transact things instantaneously, right? Whereas 15 years ago with PayPal, sometimes you would have to, it would take maybe a minute or two to clear, and then you had to go to the clearinghouse, that sort of thing. Now you could get things instantaneously, and a couple of that with crypto and then stable coins, which is, I'm not an expert on that. It's a very interesting space, but I want to talk more about how, you talk about fintech till cows come home, but if you don't have the digital infrastructure to support that, right? It's not just the data centers; it's also the energy systems, the regulatory bodies. That whole thing is what matters. That makes, but a lot of people don't realize that some of the biggest players in fintech space, especially in the frontier market in Africa, are actually MNOs, the mobile network operators, right? In East Africa, you have what is it? Who's Kenyan here? Yeah, and Peso, which is Safaricom's, is owned by Safaricom. They're making money from that. I mean, that brings in a lot of, I mean, the type of transactions that go on just within that system is tremendous, right? So there's industry, the sector is bright, industry is bright. Um, you know, the only thing is, some of the traditional banks, the legacy banks, are complaining because they don't have, they're like any industry, you have regulations, you have things you have to abide by. If you're a bank, a financial services firm, there's regulations you have to abide by to have your license. MNOs, mobile network operators, don't. If you're a mobile network operator, you have a license to operate to provide data, voice and data. But now you can you can actually take in people's money and exchange it, and then you're not abiding by the same principle. So legacy banks are becoming uh, um, they're being threatened, right? And then adding fintech on top of that layer, and it's a good day to be a consumer in Africa and other markets too. So that's my take on that.
Thank you for that, Nii. Um, and I'm going to ask this next question to Alexander. You're doing a lot of work in agriculture and you're using AI technology, artificial intelligence. Can you give us an overview of how your company, UFArmX, integrates AI into agricultural and agri-finance?
Okay, thank you. So I'll give an overview of what my company does. So we've developed a patent technology that is able to use everyday farmer data to generate reliable credit scores. So we're able to weigh like both geospatial and socioeconomic factors to then generate credit scores. Using our technology thus far, we've been able to support over 8,000 farmers across 3 sub-Saharan countries with a default rate below 10%. So we're actively significantly outperforming traditional banking institutions in our markets in Nigeria, Senegal, and Liberia. So for me, I'm not like a super technical person. Our CTO is. But for me, AI is really great at recognizing patterns. So like the way that we actually started the company, we didn't actually start as a tech company. We were actually providing a service. So we were providing input-based loans to farmers. So we were giving them seeds, fertilizers on credit. And as we were continuing to support farmers, we noticed constant themes in the data sets, differentiating the farmers that were able to successfully repay versus not. So from there, we were able to then develop a proprietary algorithm to weigh, the socioeconomic factors, so like family size, pinpoint GPS location of like where the farm is, the proximity to certain roadways, marketplaces. Damn, I'm losing track. What was the? Oh, how do we use AI? So yeah, so we use AI to run a diagnostic on that information, and then we also are able to project yield output based on that data that we collect. And then the farmers that we do successful, like that are actually approved by us, we do give them access to AI-powered advisory services based on their personal profiles. So that's essentially how we use AI. Essentially, we just run diagnostics on information and then make projections and generate credit scores.
Great. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on this credit scores? What is a credit score as somebody who's looking to do farming work on the continent? And also, as far as access to credit, predicting yields and crops, or reducing harvest losses, does UFArmX or AI in general, are you guys positioned to help the farmers with some of these issues that come around with agriculture?
Okay, so our overarching goal is to be able to successfully scale access to finance for African farmers. As of today, over 90% of farmers in the sub-Saharan don't have access to institutional loans and finance. Therefore, they get stuck in perpetual cycles of poverty, right? So like the average African farmer produces at a rate 11 times lower than their North American counterpart. And that's due to the fact that they simply just don't have access to high quality resources and inputs to maximize their productivity. There's a huge opportunity here. Like, so to just compare apples to oranges, in North America, well, in the United States, there's 3 million total farmers, yet the agri input industry does over $100 billion annually in revenue, versus the continent of Africa, we have nearly 600 million farmers, yet only 8 billion in inputs are sold.
Wow.
So there's a huge opportunity there, but the fact is that these farmers don't have access to input-based, in credit. Banks on the continent are adverse to lending to farmers. Nearly 80% of the African population works in some sort of food production, yet less than 3% of commercial lending on the continent goes to agri lending. I keep losing track of I'm trying to circle back. So what was the
Predicting yields, reducing
right? So
harvest losses.
for us,
How is AI?
AI is best for predicting yields. So like based on the land size, crop type, the climate pattern, we're able to successfully predict yields based on the input packages that we're able to provide the farmers.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so we're going to move to the next segment of this discussion, and I'm going to move back to Nii. You do a lot of diaspora bond work, and so maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the diaspora is increasingly enforced both in the fintech and tech entrepreneurship ecosystem, and how can diaspora innovators and investors accelerate Africa's AI and fintech ecosystems? Where do you see the opportunity, especially in the data center space too?
Okay. There's a lot there. So I wear many hats, like a lot of speakers before me. I'm a founder, executive director for a think and do tank called Diaspora Country Index, DCI. DCI has been around even from the days, it started really from my days when I created the World Bank's Diaspora Engagement Program. Ran that for 2.5 years, the same thing at AFDB. And present day, it's a think and do tank. And what we do is it's sort of like the World Bank's doing business report, but for diaspora engagement. We rank countries on their ability to engage your diaspora. We have our main index where it's regionally focused, where we rank countries or rank regions on various indices and metrics. I don't know all of them at the top of my head. And then we have our diaspora bond index based on what was happened this year with ODA, with USG's cut. Wow, that's some powerful juju.
You said USG.
Who's using that juju here? West African juju? Yeah, so with USG's U.S. government, just for you guys who don't know what USG is, for U.S. government's ODA cut of whatever percentage it is, mostly U.S. aid, there are countries that are being they have to look for alternative financing because of what has happened. They have to properly plan. Ethiopia has raised taxes to support their beneficiaries, especially for healthcare services. Other countries have to look at other donors. I was just in Brussels, and the EU is concerned about the state of development cooperation. So with diaspora bonds, it's a bond that is issued by a sovereign country to your diaspora, and we have a readiness index. So if you're a country, and because your ODA has been cut, we look at the top rating agency, which is S&P. I know it's not perfect, but we use that as a benchmark, and then we have other metrics. So we give you a score, and we update this on a monthly basis. We just haven't updated the past 2 months. I have a team. I'm paying them. Give me a week or so. We will update August and September, but July's data is there. So if you want to issue a bond, right, to like Ethiopia built this Renaissance Dam, that was not rated by a creative agency. That was based on Ethiopia's, the Habesha cultural dynamic, the bonds of trust. Ethiopia can do it. Although Nigeria raised a bond 2 years ago, it was oversubscribed. And I heard that was not rated by any rating agency, but it was oversubscribed, and most of the investors were high net worth individuals, mostly from the London, Metro, New York area, right? But not every country has, but Nigeria has.
Do you know how much money was raised?
Everybody keeps asking me that. That you gotta have to ask the current finance minister. I remember his name, I forget. Wh- whatever she said. So, there's a lot of appetite for diaspora bonds. Israel has done this successfully in the past, but they can use that cultural identity of the Jewish diaspora to do it. I know India has done it, but because of this cut to ODA, countries now have to say to themselves, okay, how do we plan for a future for social development, healthcare, agriculture, or infrastructure? And now you have to look at this alternative financing. And I think more of us need to look at that. So that's on the diaspora financing side. You asked a question about the what was it?
Diaspora innovators and investors can accelerate Africa's AI and fintech ecosystems.
I'm not going to. I'll let him talk on AI. I mean, I think AI is a bit overhyped. We have AI is real. I think it's important for the urban Western market. In Africa, not just Africa, other frontier emerging markets, there's certain countries that I would say 85% of the African continent is still energy, still has energy poverty, right? You have landlocked countries, Burundi, South Sudan, who can't even get base electricity. We're talking about AI. We should be talking about how do we get affordable internet? How do we get water? I think AI is important, but I think we need the basics before we start talking about some of these other things. In terms of how can the diaspora get involved, all these digital systems are complex. They break down. You need to maintain them. If you're a diaspora who's worked at Google, Microsoft, Verizon, and you're going back to your country of origin, talk to your country, your minister, your ambassador, and say, look, I want to get involved that in my country's development. That's one way to get involved. I don't think a diaspora should. If you're a diaspora, I don't think you should get involved by putting money into a project till you actually get involved by seeing, touching, and understanding how a country develops, especially if you've been outside a country for a couple of decades, you haven't gone back because either you're dissident, you don't trust the country. Not all diasporas are monolithic. There are people who haven't gone back because of local reasons, family reasons, and they're comfortable in their way of life in Scotland or in Montreal, right? So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm going to ask to both of you, and you guys can choose who wants to take it first. Don't fight, please. Fintech brings a lot of questions on consumer protection. And then, of course, AI raises a lot of issues of bias, ethics, and data security. What governance frameworks are needed to ensure that these technologies are inclusive and safe? If I may ask also, how should African governments approach digital sovereignty?
Okay. So on AI governance, there's plenty of people in this city that can do a better job than me answering a question, but I know enough to, there needs to be guardrails for what AI can do. AI can do some things that are extraordinary that maybe 1,000 people, traditionally you need 1,000 people to do. You can literally click a button and have something spit out, and you can imitate somebody, voice, picture, video. It's scary what AI can do, right? So there needs to be guardrails, right? So there's that. I know the African Union, everybody knows AU is AU. There's internal struggles, but they've actually have a framework for countries to develop. I know on the AFTA side, they're trying to there is a framework, but I don't know if it's been ratified. The UN has frameworks. They have OECD. So there are all these frameworks. I just think that there needs to be some kind of harmonization. And also, if there needs to be enforcement. If you make a mistake or you don't follow a rule, what is the binding resolution? What is the enforcement mechanism for a country, right? I know here there are a lot of people who are, if you're a minority, Black, Latino, some of you has a different pigment from the majority population, you're concerned because during COVID, remember everybody was masked, right? So if you go to bank, if you go to a financial institution and you have you go in there and, somebody may pick you up because of your mask and somebody comes in there, maybe something happens and then, somebody robs a bank and then they say, okay, well, we think it's you because you're a mask. Well, just because of my car's skin, you're picking me up, right? That's just one. But also housing. Housing is another issue where if you are trying to sell your property, people who, I don't know the actual instance, but housing, real estate is a big issue. There are all these issues that, people are dealing with about using AI, right? So there's that. You asked about what
I asked about sorry. I think it was the governance
what
and how to make sure that these frameworks are inclusive and safe for AI.
okay. I want him to talk about AI use cases, but you didn't talk about it. One thing I want to hear more about you is more on AI use cases for agriculture for an ag tech side. So yeah, so I think because there's you deal with more on farm activity, but what about off farm?
So
And tell the distinctions about it,
right.
so they know.
So we mainly deal with farmer finance. So like we're not in the production side of it. So in terms of like AI ability to assist with like ag tech on the other side, that's not our main focus is farmer finance. So like getting farmers access to the resources that they need to maximize their productivity. So we aren't really hands-on with the production aspect of things.
Okay, well, I have a couple of more questions in addition to this. Looking ahead 10 years from now, how do you envision all of this technology to change and transform Africa from a positive standpoint? And how do you think we can help that?
So, I mean, I definitely feel like tech is going to assist with like democratizing access to finance for not even just farmers, but for, everyday people on the continent. But I also want to like the point that he made, right? So I feel that people need to keep in mind that, especially with farmers in Africa, they don't care how cool your solution is, AI, drones, they care about their problems. So if you're not actively addressing their issues, you're wasting your time. And then anybody that is like proposing a tech-like solution without any elements of personal engagement in an emerging market with that lacks foundational levels of infrastructure is simply just selling you a pipe dream, right? So I also feel that a lot of times we approach some of these challenges unintentionally from a position of arrogance. I say that like because we kind of approach it like off of a thesis without actually directly engaging the people that you claim to want to positively impact. So the way that I see technology and Africa transforming over 10 years, I know like our goal is right. So the way that we actually started by actually farming on ground. Then from there, we were able to successfully provide loans, input-based loans. And then now we've been deploying our software at retailers, enabling them to extend their inventory in a buy now, pay later format to farmers. But our overarching goal is we want banking institutions on the continent to be able to process their loan applications using our software. So like think Experian, Equifax that we have here in the Western world. We want to be that foundational tool used for successful farmer lending. The current state of like agri lending on the continent right now is reminiscent of like the 1970s in the Western world, where they felt that giving small ticket size loans to who they considered the poor at the time was too risky. Then microfinance rose. They were able to identify the correct data points to look at in terms of risk analysis. And then now microfinance is essentially everything now, right? So I feel like that is the current state of things in terms of agri lending on the continent. So I foresee it's probably going to take more than 10 years though, especially the way that our policies work. But I definitely do feel that technology can enable like democratizing like access to finance to, the general population.
Great. Nii? Thoughts, 10 years, tech, which one should we focus? Is it data centers or what is it?
Sure. I was hoping you would ask me a question on semiconductors. That's a lot of my, well, I do a lot of work on advanced manufacturing semiconductors. What myself and others are trying to do is extend Western supply chains to the African continent for validation when it comes to the device and I'm sorry, for the device and semiconductor ecosystem. So, for instance, once the chips are made in the fab, there's a whole process of testing, packaging, software design, and Africa can play into that. Right now, it's dominated by countries like Malaysia, Costa Rica, Thailand, and India. India is doing a lot of things in tech, but we have a lot of people in the global diaspora. We're not structured. We're working on that. If you look at 10% of the Silicon Valley companies, they're all headed by somebody who's of Indian origin. In 10 years, I'm hoping that it could be an African. And hopefully half of that, those Africans are women, right? Because if you look at most tech professionals, they're all male, right? So we're working on that, but it's important with with all the critical rare earth metals that are used in, the industrial supply chain, military, industrial complex, consumer electronics. Africa doesn't do any value added. We don't make electronic components that go into computers, data centers, that sort of thing. So some of us are trying to change that. There's a couple of efforts, a couple of companies in East Africa. There's a company called STL. They're doing some semiconductor. There's a couple other companies in Morocco. So it's slowly but surely you're seeing this happen. And also, I'm coming to find out you're part of the WhatsApp group that added you with the semiconductors, the semiconductor WhatsApp group. There are thousands of Africans in the diaspora that have experiences working with NVIDIA, Intel, Texas Instruments. And we're just trying to organize and structure ourselves just like the Indians did back 30, 40 years ago. So what does it look, if I had a crystal ball, right? If I had a crystal ball, what does 10 years look like for me? 10 years is we have 8 to 10 countries on the African continent that are doing something in semiconductors. Those semiconductors are supporting this gentleman right here with what he's trying to do in agriculture.
What he's already doing.
He's already doing, but hopefully he can do more value added. And you want to do there you go. I got you. We have a lot of healthcare challenges on the continent. We're making our own indigenous African medical devices. Let me repeat that again. Indigenous African medical devices. I to always call Africa Wakanda. Well, look, in Wakanda, we have 1.5 billion people on the continent. In the next 20 years, we're going to have 2.5 billion. We have malaria. We have other tropical diseases, but we also have different weather patterns and weather zones. We have humidity. You have places in North Africa that get snow. We need to develop our own devices that can withstand humidity, that can withstand sand. We import things, and we don't use our universities to develop, use R&D to develop our own ecosystem. That's number 2. Number 3, jobs. Once you have that layer, chips, semiconductors are your chips. They're the brain. You develop that, you put those in devices that can support almost anything that moves using printers, a PCB, printed circuit board. That's any component, and then it goes to industrial good. You can create economic opportunity, and that creates jobs, right? So to me, that's the holy grail. And for me, the North Star is India. If you go to India, that's how they started. They used their diaspora, they brought back their skills and training, and over time, look what India has become. India is now the #1 producer of vaccines and OTC, over-the-counter medication, is because of what the plan they laid out. I mean, India's one country, and we have 54. I know it's not going to be easy, but we can't make excuses. We just can't. We have AFTA. I don't like excuses. Don't give me excuse. Oh, we have different regions and different languages. We have fintech. We're using fintech to send money. We can find a way, right? We don't have time for excuses because if the Chinese can do it, if the Lebanese can do it, we can do it, right?
I agree. Totally. Well, thank you, Nii and Alexander, for your insightful thoughts. What we've heard today, especially on FinTech and AI, is not just about technology. They're about financial inclusion, food security, trust, and building Africa's digital sovereignty. With the right infrastructure, capital, and governance, Africa can move forward from a testing ground to being a leader in global digital innovation. So please thank me, please join me. I meant, please join me in thanking our speakers. And we have a couple of minutes for questions if anyone has any questions before we close. Okay, perfect. We have questions, guys.
Got it. Hi, thank you, Dr. Regina Fuller-White. I work in international development, so I guess that's the lens that I look at the world. So I guess the question is for both of you. I'm curious, there's all the statistics on the growing youth population in Africa. From your perspectives, how can you take charge of the AI revolution, of just the digital revolution, and not get left behind on the continent? Thank you.
So you're asking how we can take charge of that and getting the youth involved?
Yeah.
So we actually do have a partnership with the Seed Project. So it's NBA. So the current president of NBA Africa is the founder of the Seed Project. Our goal with that was to make ag more attractive to the youth, and to let them know that that's a viable, career option. So I think programs like that, just getting involved with the youth directly, letting them know like the opportunities that are out there. I know, I don't know if you're familiar with Andela. They did a really, so they connect tech talent from the continent to the Western world, essentially. I'm sure their business model is a bit different now. That's, the crux of it, but they connect, talent from Africa to the global world, right? So I think just programs like that, workshops. I know like Nigeria in particular, they have tons of super talented youth that are involved in technology. So I think it's just like bringing about awareness, and it boils down to, I guess, the school system as well. Yeah, and yeah.
Any thoughts?
Your question was how can could you repeat that?
How can we empower youth to be a part of this semiconductors if they don't have the skills, the training, the knowledge? Like, can we take all the youth talent that we have on the continent to be a part of these?
Yeah. So let's extrapolate that. So when you say youth talent, there's, depend on, I think AFDB, African Development Bank, characterized youth. There's different, well, I looked at AU. I think the AU definition of youth, it varies, but there are people who are, I would say, under 18, they're still living with their parents. They're beholden to getting supported by parents. But if you're outside of, if you're over 18 and you graduate from high school or equivalent, and you're out there, how do you make a living? And I think now, maybe I go back 15 years ago, there wasn't many co-working spaces, incubators, accelerators. Fast forward today, you have a lot of these spaces, right? So first thing is get connected to one of these, I call it entrepreneurial ecosystems. If you have an idea, go there. It may suck, but somebody will look at you and say, your idea sucks, but come back, whatever. Keep trying. I've been an entrepreneur. I'm sure you've been an entrepreneur many times. Somebody said, hey, your idea sucks, come back. That's more thing. Keep trying. You'll figure it out. Maybe you'll go work for somebody who has an idea that has gotten in capital, but never give up. Number two, as the content scales to 2.5 billion, there's going to be a lot of challenges. There are business opportunities, right? People are going to need food. They're going to need shelter. They're going to need clothing. They're going to need, Aliko Dangote is building a refinery. You could talk about, hey, we're trying to get rid of oil. Oil is never going away. I don't care if you're a tree hugger. Oil is never going away. You know why? Because we use oil for plastics. Oil is used in aviation. Oil is never going away. Oil is essential for, so there's opportunities in the petrochemical industry. but there's also sustainable ways to do extractives and refineries. So I could keep going on and on. And I'm, it's important. I always tell a lot of my friends who are sitting in their nice SUV in Lagos or Nairobi or Accra. If you're sitting in your street, if you're sitting in your car and you go back, you're driving, and you see somebody begging for food, or it just wants to wash your window. And I used to do this, and I'm like, I need to stop doing that. And then you're shooting away. But as annoying as it is, that's the only way for that kid or young person to make income because there's nothing else to do. So we have to find ways to get that person productive, right? And that's an issue. If we don't find an issue, it's going to exacerbate. I mean, we're 1.5 billion people. Imagine being 2.5 billion.
How do we build systems? I love the entrepreneurial hubs. I'm thinking of there's one in Osu and Accra, but like systematically, how can we?
My sister, let's talk afterward.
Okay.
Let's talk afterward.
We have a question in the back, and then there's also Alexandra and John.
It's just a quick question. It's just a follow-up to Nii's kind of mentality on why he said that he doesn't like excuse. Excuse has been the order of the day in Africa, and that starts from our leadership. So before we go to the youth, can't we start with the leadership so that they have that political will to see that there's this urgent need? And how are you guys, what strategy are you proposing or do you have to make sure that these leaders can bring that kind of mentality to the society?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'm not a, I'm not a, I do policy, but I focus on policy on industrial and economic development. I'm not a social scientist or a political scientist, but we all know the challenge in the continent is leadership, right? Some people say Idi Amin was a good leader, right? I mean, that's what I've heard. Some people say Sani Abacha was a good leader. Jerry Rawlings was a good leader, right? So at the end of the day, people take cues from their leader, right? What goes on top trickles on down, right? Now look at a continent. We have 54 countries, 55. If you're Moroccan, excuse me, I know that sometimes you want to. Oh God, am I supposed to go there about what's the Sahara? We only have 2 female leaders on the continent. That's an issue, right? I think if half of the continent had female leaders, half of our problems will go away. Because if you give a female $1 or €1, she's going to make sure the kids are fed, the kids are in school. Me, I don't have those animal instincts, right? I don't drink, but most males probably want to go to a bar, go play. But women, I think, are better stewards of our purse than males, right? I'm not saying women are better than us. Women will chop money. Would they chop as much as us? That's a question. But to me, we need more gender parity. But how do we get to where you're going? That's by getting women leaders in as mayors, provisional governors, so that they can contest to be a leader. That's how we start. I know that Mo Ibrahim has sort of done this. He's trying to do some things. He's actually his governance, the prize he gives out every year, incentivizes good behavior for good leaders. I think they give $500,000 to the best. He said I don't think he's given out the prize in the past 5 years because he said he couldn't find. There you go. He said the last person to get it was, I can't remember, but he said that he hasn't given up because he couldn't find what he would call a good leader, right? So there goes to show you. But that's my stake on it. I don't know what you take or.
So I mean, I feel like if you're talking about leadership, I feel like youth. I mean, they actually empower leaders, right? Because the leaders need the youth to vote them in, right? So I try not to get involved in politics because I know these decisions are made above my pay grade, and I want to be here for a while. So, but yeah, no, like, so I know he likes to say there's no excuses, but there are some realities, right? So like talking about infrastructure, I kind of believe that Nigerian policymakers kind of use infrastructure like, you know, how the US uses they use like the war on drugs, right? So it's a never ending opportunity to just draw down funds, right? But if there's no connectivity, how are you supposed to do, you know, your everyday business? And that's a real challenge. Like, so even when we, you know, work with farmers or like do like, you know, facilitate sales and aggregate, if there's certain times where it will rain and things are unable to move for days at a time, right? So then crops and produce are going bad. So how is somebody supposed to, you know, have a successful business? There's no insurance policies in place. You're at a loss. So I don't have the answers to solve any of these policies. It's above my pay grade. I guess pray. Yeah, I don't know.
And then
Thank you
Christy.
for your insightful discussion. I'm Alexandria, and I'm gonna approach this from a development lens too. Are you working with like some of the ministries of agriculture or some of the development agencies that work with farmers to try to scale their production? And are you seeing, based on your AI tools, are you seeing a revenue increase for these farmers? And I would just be interested to know some of the insights, some of the results.
Yeah, so we actually were able to partner with IFC World Bank in Liberia to help provide traceability solutions for tree crops to support the Liberian government. But in terms of like revenue growth, so like based on our like first initial pilot, farmers' yields not only tripled, but the revenues more than doubled. On average now, revenues increased by about 65%, just through the connectivity to like high quality resources and inputs. The other question you asked about other developmental agencies, we were previously working with Prosper Africa, but as you know, they've, you know, come to an end. Right prior to this new administration, we were in extensive talks with the DFC. They were going to help to provide a facility to help support the on lending to farmers. And, you know, things have changed. So
A lot of things have changed.
yeah, but I also find that, you know, the approach that like NGOs and developmental agencies have left a bad taste on like African rural communities. Like one of the first questions that they often ask when I like go into a new village is, "Are you a part of an NGO?" Because they're notorious for like, you know, having the initial photo shoot and then they're never to be seen again. And then also I feel like African farmers don't need aid; they need access. So if your model isn't like based on demand and it's not demand driven, it's not really sustainable long term. So you have to like really actually engage with the people you know you want to positively impact and see what they're actually willing to pay for versus, you know, a thesis, oh, you need this because I know you need this, versus, you know, actually having a conversation. So but we would love to work with, you know, some developmental agencies. I know they have deep pockets. So yeah.
I had a question. As I mentioned, I just came back from Japan, and one of the most astounding things that I did was to go to the World Expo and go through the Japan pavilion. It was all recycling. Byproducts were ribbons, or energy. It was phenomenal. The Japanese have it all together on the recycling, and I actually had one of my Nigerian companies said to me, please find out about their technology. So my question is, have you all looked at maybe partnering with the Japanese, because they are so far ahead on the recycling?
I mean, I am an advocate for like, you know, climate smart agriculture, but I also do feel that it's a bit unfair to put the onus of like climate change on Africans that didn't necessarily make this mess. So yeah, I'll let him answer.
Yeah, just trying to gather my thoughts. So for recycling, let me talk about Ghana and Nigeria, because I know it's two markets as well. Ghana, you know, we had a fairly robust recycling program, and then it was taken away. And you know, recycling, you need to have the ecosystem, you need to have the operators that process it, and then you need a off taker, right? That's very, very important. If you don't have the off taker, then you can recycle it, and you don't have anybody process those whatever, So that's one issue. But that's still an excuse. Like I said, I don't like excuses. I personally think like some of the FMCG companies, Unilever, Procter and Gamble, these guys are the ones that are offering products like this, right? You use it and then you throw it away. Here we have a whole ecosystem. In Africa, some countries just don't have a place where you can recycle things. I think it's like that in Nigeria. So could and I know the Koreans, the World Bank has this green facility that's supported by the Koreans, and the Koreans have tried to set up recycling projects in Africa, not just in Africa, Latin America, and other frontier emerging markets, and to various levels of success. So if Japan can come in and it's a true partnership, don't just try to sell Mitsubishi or whatever equipment, but partner with a local African indigenous company so that there's a technology transfer where you're transferring technology so that people can, you can bring in all the equipment, but if it breaks down, how are you going to repair it? That's one thing. Equipment breaks down, you're going to fly something in from God knows where. There needs to be a maintenance culture to fix that equipment. So that's what I'll say on that. But the Japanese are doing some fabulous work, and the Koreans. But I also think over time we can innovate ourselves. We have universities, we have the R&D, we have the diaspora. We'll get there.
Thank you so much. Well, we are now getting to the end of our programming, and I want to thank Nii and Alexander for joining us today. And I'm going to give some brief closing remarks. Round of applause for our two gentlemen. As we close out, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and one of you for your time today, your energy and your vision. I want to thank our speakers. I want to thank, of course, Texas A&M for hosting us. Dr. Laurienti, if he's still in the room, I want to thank you too. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Laurienti. Well, today we've seen what's possible when Africa's future is framed not in limits, but in opportunities. From space and aviation to energy, technology, and shared security. Our work, however, does not end here. The real power of gathering like this is in the connections that we build across government, industries, universities, and communities. So I encourage you to take these next few moments and the time that we have left together to truly network, exchange ideas, of course, exchange business cards and networks, but imagine collaboration that extends beyond today. If somebody sends you an email, please do follow up with them if you met them here. At Asha Strategies, our mission is to keep these conversations alive and move toward action. Again, to move toward action. We are public affairs and strategic communication firms dedicated to helping leaders like you, organizations, and communities to shape policies, build partnerships, and tell their stories on the global stage. If today was great and you were inspired, I hope to continue working with all of you so that we can turn these ideas into actual work and lasting impact. I want to thank you again for being part of this year's journey, and for all of us and all the ones that came from afar. I know Natasha flew in today, so very grateful to you for moderating all of the initial panels, and everybody else that has come. Please stay in touch, and let's continue to push beyond boundaries together. Thank you so much.